Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a new technology in front of us today. You don't have mics in front of your face again. Anyone who wishes to speak will have to move down to the front desk in order to be heard unless you want to yell. This is the new speaker system we're trying out tonight, see how it works. So far, it does work. They hear me, but I can talk loud anyway. So that being said, I'd like to call, it's Tuesday, December 14th at 5:33 p.m. We're at the Lower Theater in town of Rockingham, and there was a Zoom link on the agenda. Right now I'll call the meeting to order. And just to notify everybody, we are going to switch a few items around on the agenda. The errors and omissions will come up. We're going to put them because they're not going to be here very long. It's only a $6 mention. If the library crew is here, I don't see them.
They're online.
Oh, they're online.
When
Okay,
they're ready,
then
we'll just
I
ask
thought
them.
we moved them up because they should be short and sweet.
Yep.
And then the people won't have to hang around and listen to us haggle over the big stuff.
Okay.
Okay, that being said, I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes of December 1st. They're in your packet.
I move that we approve the minutes for December 1st.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of December 1st, 2021. Any further discussion, corrections, additions, omissions that anybody can think of? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting.
No additions for this evening.
Nothing, I have nothing. Anyone else on the board? All right, we'll go down to public comment on items not on the agenda, and in front of you, there is a Rockingham area Afghan refugee resettlement information sheet, and pardon me for your name, but mention it for the minutes, and he's going to speak on the item, so.
Thanks. Yes, I'm Steve Proctor. Many of you know me because of my former role as the founder and director of the Community Asylum Seekers Project here in town. And since 2018, 5 asylum seekers came to live in Rockingham. 3 of them are still living here in town and well settled in. And that experience of being involved with those 5 people here make me realize what a welcoming place Rockingham is, and I'm proud of our town for that. At this point, I'm sure many of you or all of you are aware of the refugee resettlement efforts being made in Brattleboro by the Ethiopian Community Development Council, ECDC. They're working actually in collaboration with CAST, but they are the refugee resettlement agency responsible for bringing approximately 100 refugees from Afghanistan to southern Vermont. They're looking at the counties Bennington, Windham, and Windsor counties, probably over the next couple of months. And a small group of folks here, 9 of us here from, I think we all live either in Rockingham or Westminster, are in a co-sponsorship team with ECDC to help resettle a refugee family here in the greater Rockingham area, probably in Bellows Falls, because that makes the most sense in terms of logistics like public transportation and so on, but somewhere in this area. And we're here tonight just to let you all know what we're doing. And I've left an information sheet here for you, and glad to answer any questions. If anybody has any. And also my contact number is there on that sheet, so if you have questions later on or comments or want to volunteer or anything like that, be in touch. And mostly I just want to say that, like I said, Rockingham is a welcoming place, and we're hopeful and expecting that the community will rise up and welcome another family from another part of the world to come live here.
Any questions, Steve? Comments?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for doing
Thank you
Be
all.
interested to see where this goes. Steve.
Yes, okay, that sounds great. And thank you all for the work you're doing tonight. Nobody envies what you got in front of you.
Yeah, we'll
it.
take that.
Right.
The people that are here, including online, that are.
Sure, okay, yes. So also here from this small committee, this working on the refugee resettlement is Laura Green, Alex Alexander, who's new here in town, and Lynn Parker Haas, who's on the line with us. Thanks very much.
Okay, let's move on to the manager's report.
Thank you. It's a little, take a little getting used to not having microphones, so. And then periodically, if I have to check to see if anybody else is being admitted, so. Just a couple of quick items. First of all, thank you to Ben Major and his committee and the folks that worked on the Festival of Lights for Saturday's parade. It seemed to be a really nice event and certainly for the first, it was very well received. And from the folks that I've spoken to, they were quite pleased with it and hope that it can continue. So just like to thank him and all the other folks that worked with him for, making a nice event for Saturday night. So that was a nice holiday type event. There are still, I think, other community events for the holiday, and can join us downtown or frequent our merchants and try and help them in their holiday shopping to help keep their stores and keep their businesses going. So for folks who can, we certainly appreciate when we supporting your local forward. So things I'll copy the rest. We have so many other things in budget that I think I'll just keep it short. So.
Anyone else have anything? Add to that? All right, let's move on to the agenda. As I mentioned earlier, we're shifting a few things around. And Mr. Obohosky is here for the errors, omissions, and additions. Coming around, but we'll let Paul explain it and go from there.
So this will be the last errors and omissions that you'll see this year. And as you can see, the net change to the grand list is $6. And the reason we're here is that the piece that is affected is also in current use. So we need to make sure that this errors and omissions gets taken care of this evening so that we can send to the state the current use change that will end up happening. This is a very large piece of property. During the course of the year, a couple of lots were pulled off this property, as well as a butter had his property surveyed. And when we went through the whole change, what we did is we ended up adding 0.39 acres to this piece, and we should have actually subtracted it. So what's really happening is the acre correction is that we're going from 210.87 acres down to 210.09 acres. The change in value is 646,100 down to 645,500. It's a change of $600. And again, because we added 0.39 acres and should have subtracted from this overall large lot. So again, the effect on the grand list is grand list will go down $6.
Okay, take a motion to accept the errors, omissions, and additions as just described.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to accept the errors, omissions, and additions report from the grand list, and that change is a $6 change. All those, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
And just one other quick update, if I could, we have had some interest in the 2 lister positions that are going to be open. Paul Noble spoke with a gentleman today for about an hour. That gentleman is going to be stopping in to speak with us. Prior to that, we had another person come in about 2 weeks ago because he knew Camilla was not going to be running. And so we will be back in contact with the individual. I know we're doing an interview with Betsy Thurston for the shopper, where she's going to write an article, as well as we're going to run an ad in the shopper, just to kind of keep this. And then we're going on to the feed on January 5th. So the existing listers are really out there trying to work, promote, recruit, to make sure that we have a couple of really decent qualified candidates, or maybe 3 or 4 that are going to run for the 2 seats. So just kind of as the update of where it's headed as of March 1st. So just to let everybody know on this board.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, and that's the next change. We're gonna go, as the library board is ready, I see here. If they're ready to go, we can start on the review of the library budget request.
Can everyone hear me?
Sure.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to, having heard you say that this should be short and sweet, I have no interest in making it any different. So I'm going to just give just a minute or two of context, and then I'm happy to take any questions that you folks have. The libraries, and I'm Ian Graham. I've met some of you, but I look forward to working with all of you. I started on November 1st, and I'm having a great time. Really happy to be in town. The library's FY23 budget proposal is $444,705. That's a 3.83% increase over last year. The proposed tax appropriation is $392,400, which is a smaller increase, but it's still 3.47%. And this budget was unanimously approved by the Library Board of Trustees on October 25th of this year. So, I'm going to talk about, really quick, I'm going to talk about the 3 things that really constitute the budget. Those are services, collections, and the building itself. The library services that we provide to the town residents are by far the highest expense in the library budget, since compensation falls into that part of the budget. We have 3 full-time staff members, 3 part-time staff members, and 2 Saturday employees. That line is increased by 5.53%. That's partly because of contractually due increases for union staff. Also, my compensation is having an impact on that, primarily because my benefits are more expensive than those of the previous director. This year, we actually decreased the library materials budget by 4.4%, but we were able to increase our more popular lines, especially some of the book budgets. And that was just by being able to consolidate some of our electronic resources, which provided some savings. As you all know, it's a big building, and it's expensive. It's about $26,000 a year just for electricity. And we're going to try this year to figure out if there's ways that we can cut back on that, especially by investigating things such as grant-funded LED lighting conversion and that kind of stuff. So I look forward to figuring out where there's some opportunity there. And I just want to end by reminding everybody that the library is open 6 days a week. There's no appointments required. We're encouraged by the amount of traffic we're seeing in the building. And although we haven't returned to pre-pandemic activity, we hope that we will soon. But either way, we will know, because we're actually gathering a lot of statistics right now just so we better understand the use of the library. For example, we're going to start a day count, counting the number of people that come in the building. And we know that the library represents both a cultural opportunity and a financial burden to the taxpayers of Rockingham, and we're grateful for the town's support. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions people have about the budget.
Hi, Ian. Welcome to Rockingham. I've read about you in the paper.
Thank you.
The reduction in traffic that I experienced at the library, do we still need as many people as we had before?
I think that's an excellent question. I've been here 6 weeks. I can't really answer that question right now, but, we've seen some fluctuation where we feel like we're really going to see a return to, a pretty full level of activity, and then some new variant comes out and things get depressed a little bit. As I said, overall the use of the library it's really growing, and it's requires the amount of staffing that we have right now. There was a staff position that a person retired 18 months ago, and that position has basically at this point been eliminated. It was distributed out a little bit, and then there was some hours of that were held, about 10 hours worth, and we have no intention of rehiring that position at this point, or any plan to in the near future. But I think the reason to gather all these statistics is so we really have a better understanding. You know, I'm very mindful of the expense of this operation for the town, and I would like the operation to be consistent with what the town, you know, that it's serving the town as it should. And so it'll take a little time for us to gather that information, but I fully intend to know more about that in the coming months, you know, as we gather more. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I guess just for the board's purposes, for the handouts that we gave you tonight for the budget updates, they do have numbered pages, so I know it's confusing on the first one, did not. So Ian's portion of the budget actually starts on the top of page 23 and then runs through the bottom of roughly page 20. Well, actually goes, I guess, to the bottom of page 26. We made a couple of minor adjustments just because we did some allocations and updates on some of the unemployment insurance and costs and a couple of minor items. So you can see the areas in yellow that we did do some modifications to. So there was a slight decrease in the funding because of that, or the requested funding, just because we went back and worked through some numbers because we had some changes on our overhead in terms of insurance coverages for the property and liability and a couple other items. So it actually works out so that his current, based on his submitted request and then these modifications, did make a slight change in his overall request. I think it's less than $3,000 and change. So just want to bring that to the board's attention.
Couple of comments, if I might. The thing I think that struck me is amazing was the amount of salaries, full-time and part-time, that they're very close. You're projecting 90,000, almost 91,000 for full-time, and your part-time is almost, it's 84 or 5. It seems like a lot of money for part-time employees. They may be well deserved, well true, but it struck me as odd that they're that close. And do you have a handle on how many full-time and part-time you have?
I mean, so I appreciate that. I've noticed the, you know, similarities between those numbers. You know, there's 2 full-time because the director's salary isn't included in that line, and there's really 3.5 part-time. And so that, you know, that's why that all plays out that way. You know, this is how it is arranged right now. And I'm learning about how the operations are. One of the tricks of a building like this and this size is just keeping it staffed when it's open. You know, we really have 2 totally different operations. We have a youth department and a main floor, and those are essentially like running 2 storefronts. And so, you know, it's really built around making sure that we're here for the town people to visit.
So you have 3, did you say 3 full-time?
Including me, there's 3 full-time.
So it's actually, your salary's listed separate, that's why I was.
That's part of the explanation for sure.
Then the part-timers are how many?
There's 5, but 2 of those folks really add up to a half timer. They work Saturdays. Shirley and Alma, they've worked here for a long time, and they work about 4.5 hours each a week. So it's 5 part-timers, but 2 of those are very part-time.
Looking at your budget you sent out on the computer, that's one that you generated, not the one that we have on in front of us. I don't know if anyone else bought the one from that Ian had sent out on the internet. Yeah, it came. I think Scott got it. He forwarded it out to us. That's got a yearly breakdown. But the reason I brought that up is that you mentioned earlier that you're in COVID situation and you're looking for an increase from the town for transfer in of about $13,000. And Scott just mentioned you made some adjustments to drop that to another $3,000. To me, it would seem that somewhere between that and the amount that is not going to be spent because of the COVID conditions that I'm going to recommend, I don't know how the board feels, but that we continue with the 379, 250 and assume that they can pick up the difference of $10,000 that's needed with savings that they're going to have due to not having to spend a large amount that they have expended. If you look at, if you don't have that in front of you, you can't tell, but looking at the 22 budget, you got $428,300, what you requested, and your expenditures actual right now is 189.6. So I know that's only in November, but taking that into consideration, I would think you're going to end up with about $20,000 to $25,000 left over, that unless you have some other thoughts for that leftover money. I mean, you know, the year before the 21st, you actually had a $10,000 surplus, almost 11. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but
I would support that approach, Peter.
I mean, we're not final with the budget yet, but I mean, you know, I just want to put that on the table. It's just from going through the numbers.
Given the surplus of last year,
Yeah, I mean, so what they had last year should, you know, and with the pandemic numbers, you know, they're going to be out probably more than that. It's probably about 20,000. I'm going to guess 2025. So even if we put the 10 against what they're requesting from the town, they're still going to have like 15 left over to play with somewhere. So,
Why do we expect that COVID will make their expenses less? I mean, they're open, now they're reopened 6 days, and like last year, they weren't open.
I know, but they budgeted the money was budgeted out there. So if we spend it, that's a surplus, the same as our town budget. If we don't spend everything on our town budget, then we're going to end up with a
Right.
fund balance that's going to be up there that we could use to return to the, you know, to the people.
So you're saying that they should use the leftover money? And
That would be
And
my
not
suggestion, but
and not-
that,
and
you
not
know,
need-
I'm only 1 to 5 people on the board, so
No, I'm just trying to understand. You're saying that they've got leftover money.
I would think
to
they
cover
would have it. They had it in the past, that, you know, the 21, they had $11,000, so. $1,000 increase, so if they
Yeah,
have
so
20
they-
left, then
that.
they,
They should have it.
yeah, they
Okay.
should be able to do it without
I thought you
increasing,
were saying,
without increasing the tax burden to the public.
Right,
That's what I'm
right,
asking.
okay, I understand that, I understand that.
So,
So I appreciate that. I don't want to talk over anyone else on the board. I just thought I'd address that. We're actually projecting not having a surplus this year. That partially has to do with the retirement of a director and the accumulated vacation payout, et cetera, which is quite a bit. And we have been open fully since July 1st. And so, our compensation costs are pretty much, which are 73.7% of our budget, are anticipated to be fully spent for the course of the year. I appreciate everything you're saying. I would add one more bit, which is that if any surplus that we have should go back to the taxpayers of Rockingham and shouldn't go into some other account for us. So I agree with you there. And, we are not expecting a surplus this year, but we will look more carefully and see if that can, if that might be possible. Last year, I know at this point, there was the expectation that there would be no surplus, and there ended up being one. So, we should be projecting more carefully and more accurately than we have been in the past, and we'll do that.
I think your
Not seeing
projections
it.
the pandemic has really tossed everything out the window. What you think you're going to do and what you actually end up doing is two different things. And you did mention that the traffic has been a little less than because of the pandemic, but it's starting to come back. So I'm just thinking down the line. And as I say, this is just our first review of the draft budget. So, I mean, things can change before we adopt the final. So,
Peter?
yeah. Right.
I don't have that sheet you're describing, but what was the retirement payout amount for the departed director?
You may not see it in that.
probably all bundled into,
I think it's just in the general compensation.
yeah.
They don't
Yeah,
break that
the
out.
pension is just the amount that, they don't actually show the pension amount that's paid out, they just show what they're put into the pension. So
Yeah, but
the payout is based on
How many years they've
multiple
worked there.
numbers, the service, years of service and salary, and it's all combined together. And then it comes out of Beamers or whatever, so we,
And there's a vacation time and all that.
right. So,
So just what's gonna be the taxpayer part of this is what's the transfer in the general fund,
right,
$4,000 increase.
Right, with
13.
the modifications that we
The
made, because we did drop some of their insurances and some of their other allocated costs because we were updating some of our numbers. So we tightened that up a bit. So it drops some of that down, so from his initial request. So he's closer to a level funded budget. He's still not 100% level, but he's close.
And then also, minimum wage went up, or will be, when's the next step up in minimum wage? 1st of January, next year,
That was July,
July again?
so, but I don't know what
Yeah.
they're,
So that's factored into
Right.
the increase in part-time salaries, I would imagine.
And the new director mentioned that his benefits would add additional amount. Aren't the benefits tied, are they pretty standard, or is it, when someone comes in, are there different benefits that are negotiated?
It could be if the previous library director was under her husband's insurance.
It's simply based on my family status.
Oh, okay, thank you.
okay, any other questions for Ian or the board? Anybody? See none, I guess you're free to leave if you like, or you can sit in the rest of the battle.
I'm going to sit through the rest of the battle, but I'll mute and stop my video. Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity to do this. I look forward to meeting all of you.
Okay, now review the general government budget, 2023. That's in your packet, and you also have an updated sheet that was passed out tonight that's.
maybe I could ask, since we have Andy here as well as Ryan here, maybe we'll take them a little out of order as well. So that way I can do general government last, since I'm gonna be here no matter what.
Fine with me.
That way these guys don't necessarily have to stay through the whole production, so maybe we could have Andy. And you want to just come up so we can grab you out the.
Yep.
Make sure we get your audio here.
Oh. I feel like I'm on trial.
Yeah, raise
You
your right
may
hand. Yeah.
Okay, not yet.
Yeah, it hasn't snowed enough yet, just wait.
I'll see
Yeah,
you
that'll
later. I'm
come
still
later.
here, so.
So basically, Andy's basic budget is pretty much flat.
What page is that on? Sir?
16, starts on 16.
So we're starting on 16. The, again, we've made some adjustments to some of his costs as well, because we were able to go back through and make some adjustments, which you see in yellow. I think the biggest thing that's changing year to year in this budget, and we've talked about the proposed paving budget, and realistically, we dropped a large capital payment that was a Brockways Mills, a completion of the capital project. It's about $220,000 payment. So when you add that to the previous $450,000 allocation, which is what you spent last year, just for comparative purposes, that brought you up to 670. We're estimating, and again, we don't have prices yet, we haven't put the project out to bid, but we're estimating based on increased asphalt prices that the proposed project that we would like to complete is going to be roughly about 887,000. So that's the biggest change that you'll see in terms of his budget and in relationship to what he's requested from prior years. That's the biggest adjustment. The other issue, which is not reflected in the budget and is something that we wanted just to discuss with the board as a general issue, it relates more to compensation. And the issue with compensation is, as you guys are well aware, we've recently lost an employee to the state of Vermont. they have created an enhanced recruitment package where they're offering people a higher pay scale plus a recruitment bonus for especially looking for drivers with CDLs, which is one of the critical areas for us, obviously, for snow and you know, one of our primary concerns. The issue that we have with that is obviously we can't be completely competitive with the state. They have a lot more resources than we have. We're not proposing a retention bonus and that type of a system, but we do think that there might be an opportunity to look at our compensation for our guys that do have CDLs with certain years of service and offer them an hourly increase, which is not currently reflected in our wage proposal. And it's really just a function as an incentive to try to keep guys on our payroll. It's not going to be a substantial amount of money. I think Andy had talked to me about the possibility of doing for guys who have been here short term, so 4 years or under would be $1 an hour, and for guys who've been here for over 4 years, it would be $2 an hour. Would not substantially increase our total compensation, but what it will do, hopefully, is provide enough incentive for our guys to stay. I'm really concerned that if we're less and less competitive in the marketplace, we don't have a lot of extra bodies to go out and plow extra routes. And so what does it really mean? It means in big storms, the guys that are left don't get around their routes. So you start getting phone calls from people, I can't get out of my driveway, I haven't seen the truck. You know how that goes. And the honest answer will be, yeah, probably true, because we don't have enough drivers to complete these routes on a timely basis. That's a tough service response for us to make to folks. But that's what our concern has been. So I just wanted to put that on the table as part of our conversation tonight. We really don't have any other better ideas, and certainly we're up to listening if the board thinks there might be other better ways that we might be able to do this. But it's a significant concern, and I'm afraid that if we do wait status quo and go back and try to do this as part of our union contracts, that won't happen until 2023, right? Because I think we're good for another year, and then we start negotiations, and I'd be a little concerned by then what it might do to our current forces. So that's one of the concerns. The obvious other concern that we can't control is the cost of materials. We did increase some of our line items just because Andy has already seen gravel, sub-base that he uses for roads, culverts, just the basic building blocks of what we do for road maintenance and double. And that's a concern. And I don't see that changing in the near term. So those issues are gonna build up as we go forward. Hopefully we'll see some easing of that pressure, but I don't see it happening next year. And, you know, the concern is that this might be a problem going forward, where we're going to start looking at these things really materially impacting our budgets as we try to maintain the status quo. Otherwise, for the rest of his operation, the other large scale change that we're asking is we had programmed to replace based on our equipment schedule. We had talked about this when we talked about capital. He has 2 snow trucks that now have reached beyond their useful life and have started to create significant mechanical issues for him. And the concern is we'd like to replace one of them in our current equipment, which we do every year. We transfer money from the general fund. So we would replace one of those trucks. It's roughly 150,000 outfitted with what he needs with snowplow and frame and all the materials he needs to make it snow ready. And then we would put a second one on as an article for the town meeting, and see if voters want to then approve the second one as a specific item. So we would replace the 2 trucks within the budget year, but we would have one on as a budget item and one on as an article. And quite frankly, the reason we're doing that is as soon as we get some indication that you want to go forward on the budget, we're going to place the order for the trucks, because the lead time now is so great on the trucks that if we wait until town meeting to vote on both of these items and we place the orders in March, What is our last lead time, Andy? 15 months? You get a truck?
Talked to Craig Allen the other day, and he ordered 80 trucks, got 8 of them for the first quarter, which will be in June. And he said he would reserve the 2 out of the 8 for the town of Rockingham. If not, you're gonna be looking at the following year. And it's hard right now to buy things, you know, like a loader. You order a loader right now, you're looking at maybe a year to 2 years. A pickup truck is a year out. It's hard to, you know, budget things when you don't, you know, nobody wants, just like fuel prices, nobody wants to commit to it. And I was actually surprised on the trade-in value that they're gonna give us for a 6-wheeler, $50,000 for a trade-in for each 6-wheeler. I was very surprised at that trade-in, so.
So a lot of these things are kind of unique in terms of supply chain, and I don't know how long these are gonna last. I mean, I hope it's a temporary condition, but at this point, we just don't know. And, you know, it's really starting to impact our planning and just how we go about our business, because these are unprecedented. I mean, we've had shortages before, but they would be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe 3 months, but never, you're talking, you know, over a year in some cases for some of this, which is basic equipment. We're not asking for specialty equipment or specialty manufacturing. So it's really a little disturbing, as we're not sure how this is going to go forward.
Parts are the same way too. We had a truck, we just barely got it back, sat down at ATG for 4 months waiting for a part. Town of Stratton has a truck down there that's been sitting there all summer. They won't see a part for it until April. It's same way.
So if you had a large inventory and we had lots of replacement trucks, I'd say it's a concern, but not a worry. Our fleet is pretty much at a minimum. There's not a lot of spare. So the concern is when we lose a frontline vehicle, especially for months at a time through the winter, that's a huge impact on what we're trying to do. Those are the concerns, you know, that we're looking at as we go forward this winter. I got my fingers crossed that we don't have one of these traditional Vermont winters where we're plowing and going crazy with big amounts of snow. So far, it's been, you know, knock on wood, it's been fairly manageable.
So you want to order both the trucks before the end of this year?
I think the goal would be to, we've sort of given Craig a verbal that we would like to go forward. And I think the idea would be, we'd like to do one of them as part of the budget and one of them as an article. Hopefully, the voters will agree with us and approve it.
But if they don't,
If
then
they don't, I'm going to come back and ask the board if we could take it out of surplus or some other ways to make it happen, so we can try to get.
okay. I was wondering about that because then, you know,
Right.
they might say no. They
Yeah,
do that.
well, I mean, that's always a distinct possibility.
Yeah.
Right.
So, knowing that once everybody looks at this road maintenance budget and sees it's almost a $500,000 bump, how are we probably gonna
Well, your
handle
offset
the
is,
big jump? I mean, I don't have a problem with that, other than the fact of where that sheet you gave me, where the ruin of paving kind of makes me wonder why we're doing that. But anyway, that's a question Andy can answer in a few minutes. But I mean, yeah, we're probably gonna have some fund balance. We're not gonna know that until probably after town meeting.
Right.
That we can apply to some of this. And of
well,
course,
we got
ARPA
two challenges
funds
right
and-
now in Andy's budget, which really are out of his control. One is the FEMA expenditures.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Right, which we have a pretty good feeling about, and the fact we're gonna meet with FEMA again tomorrow, and we're hopeful that she'll bring our project worksheets, so at least we can bring it back to the board and say, you know, this is the preliminary number from FEMA, which would, I think, help us all feel better. The other thing is, you are seeing some relief on your debt service because some of your longer term projects now are paid for, at least in terms of previous projects. And so I think that's why we as part of that payment management plan, there was always an understanding that we would go after, you know, we would see an acceleration in that pavement management as we went forward, because we would pay for that basically with the offset of the debt service.
The only one that's going up this year or in 23 would be Rockaway Mills, unless there's another one,
That's the only one's coming off. That was 220.
that's 220.
Correct.
What's the $800,000 project you mentioned earlier?
Wasn't bad.
Yeah, I have a list right here, if anybody wanted to see it,
I'd love to see it.
and pass it around.
Yeah.
And again, those numbers are based on an estimated quantity with an asphalt price that we're estimating based on, again, increases that we talked about. I think last year we were at 72 a ton for asphalt.
Yeah, we actually got a really good deal last year. And I'm actually hoping for a good deal this year because it's in the same area and it's one shot. So you'll get a better price. Like when they're in Saxon River, it was, little streets. They get paid by, they make money by how much ton they put out in a day. Not by, like it took them almost 5 days to do Saxon River. It should only take them a couple of days to do Pleasant Valley Road because it's one shot. So we might be able to get a better deal with, the tonnage there. And also, this is the plan we've been following. It was put together in the RMS that Everett did a few years ago. Next year, it looks like it's going to be about the same price. Also, too, is I'm going to apply for a paving grant, which usually we're only good for every 3 to 5 years. Last time we got it was in 2019, but you always apply for it. Just in case somebody else doesn't, we could always get that too. And maybe we'll get some other money that's being tossed down the line.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if we were gonna apply for those. There's a couple of grants that we don't show
So,
anything for, but,
yes.
so
that.
it doesn't hurt to ask. They can always say no.
Grants and aid is one, and then the paving grant's the other.
Yeah.
Typically, we get grants and aid, but the paving grant is, they try to cycle it, so.
And we still don't know what's gonna happen with transportation funding that's coming online. State
No, we
hasn't
don't.
figured out.
So,
I mean, there is an increase, so there
Right.
will be an increase in fundings, but where that goes is still
Exactly,
a
yeah,
question.
that's all right too.
I'm sure there's gonna be restrictions on it too, just like everything else, so.
But yeah, the paving, I mean, we have not been putting as much into that paving fund as the original paving.
And that's
plan
why,
has.
that's
So
why we did it. So, we're taking the Brockway Mills, transferring over, then we only gotta jump it up so much, not jumping up, $500,000. It's only gonna be 250,000. Or right around there.
The only other question I had is that this is all centered again out in Saxon River.
Yep.
And nothing against Saxon River, but this is the second year
Yep.
that Bellows Falls have been left off the loop.
Yep.
And we told the people on Center Street that
Yep.
street was gonna get done
I know.
2 years ago, and they got bumped last year to
Yep.
do Saxon River. And now we're doing a bumping it again.
Yep.
Some inequity going on here.
Well, the reason for that is because I was looking at the pavement maintenance plan, and it was actually scheduled for next year, but Everett had put it in a couple of years ago when we didn't make it there, when we did Hyde Hill, Brandling Way, he threw it in there. So I don't want to have to, we can do that, we can add that, but then they're gonna have to move everything to come back to Center Street. And then if you look at next year, it's all Bellows Falls next year. There's a lot of streets, and it's all in one area. Center Street, Front Street, Avenue B, Williams Terrace, that whole terrace up there is planned for next year. And this year, we're gonna do Pleasant Valley Road, which is a Class 2 road, and then we can walk away from Saxon River for 20 years.
So
That's,
I get that, and I know Pleasant Valley needs
Yep.
work, but
And that's your
that's
Class 2
gonna
roads.
create
So,
another speed demon road out there now.
Yep.
We've got reports from people out there about somebody coming through,
But-
passing cars out and left and right on 121, and we went down the main street of Saxon River, went down and passed the
Yep.
whole row of cars out there.
but
And it's
no,
dangerous doing
Well,
that.
the good news is they're gonna fix the bridge over the summer, so if he does that, he'll end up in the river. So-
But yeah, no, we spent last year, we did a bunch of Bellows Falls last year, then this year we did Saxon River. Yes, we're doing Saxon River and Rockingham next year. Then we can come back to Bellows Falls, and for the next 2 years, work in Bellows Falls. So we're just following the plan, it's nice to follow a plan, to have something, in place. So otherwise you're jumping all over the place, and I don't want to do that, so.
Well, I understand how to work too, so
Yep.
I worked in construction for 26
Yep,
years.
exactly.
I know where you
So,
come from, and
yep.
I know where the prices are.
Yeah, the mobilization, demobilization is what kills you.
It-
Just like the
That's what
equipment, it's nice to have a plan, in place, so.
um, where's this first, so.
While we're waiting, mind if I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
How's morale in your department? The guys I talked to seem pretty,
It's getting better, but, the only thing I worry about, one of the guys that you just mentioned that left is a guy that's been there over 10 years. And usually those aren't the ones that leave. And I'm worried it's gonna cause a chain reaction.
Yeah.
You know, as the price of everything's going up, and I mean, everything has doubled this year. You go to the grocery store, everybody's seeing it, you know, and then their pay is not going up, you know? So, yes, morale's getting better, but I just don't wanna see a chain reaction coming down the line too. Other guys that have, you know, half my crew's new, the other half have been there a while, you know? And usually, you know, like I say, the people that have been there a while aren't the ones that leave, so, you know, they got all the vacation time that keeps them there. And I don't want to see a chain reaction coming down the line, especially this time of year. We can't, you know, we can't afford to lose people in winter time.
So you've lost one already, and,
Yep.
and there's another one that's retiring in January, correct?
Yes.
So now you're gonna be down two from,
What we did is I talked to manager because we were down a guy else, you know, for a while this summer. We overstaffed ourselves in preparation of the guy retiring. So in the middle of winter, we weren't looking to be trying to find somebody. So we overstaffed ourselves just for 2 months. And so that guy that's already retiring, we got that position already filled. But then now I just lost other guys. So,
okay, so the January retirement's been,
yeah, that's already
Okay.
taken care of.
okay,
Yes.
so we're still down to one then.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, yep.
Right, we wanted to do that so we could help train the guy from,
Yeah, no, I get it, I'm
routes,
just trying to
it's tough to,
get everything straightened
But
out.
as for morale, it's good, but I just, like I say, it's only gonna be for so long, you know, as people, every time they go to the grocery store or the gas station, you know?
Yeah.
When, okay, they're gonna say, you know what, I can go to, you know, the state making $2 more an hour, you know, Bates and Brothers making, you know, $5 more an hour. So,
So the plan that Scott suggested with the compensation, is that would help?
I think so. Yep.
That's what's in your budget, right?
no, we did
No,
not
no,
add
we didn't
that.
budget
Oh,
it,
that's
no.
We
not
wanted
in
to bring
there.
that to your attention.
Yeah, we just, yeah.
We did it by the contract. This would be a addition outside, and I can work on those numbers, bring it to you for your meeting on the 28th.
I talked to other towns as well, and they're doing the same thing. Their foremans are, you know, going to their select boards and doing the exact same thing I'm doing right now. So it's everywhere, because they're afraid you know, like they said, we can't lose help now,
Yeah.
you know? So we're not the only ones that are doing that. So.
So do you need a motion, do we need a motion to support the plan Scott talked about with the hourly increase?
Well, I got a sense of the board that you want to at least bring it back to you. I'll work with Andy on it. We'll get some prices to you, and then I'll get it back to you plenty of time before the meeting of the 28th.
Okay.
And we still have another
You don't have to
meeting.
make a motion, it's just that when you've done, everything's done when you adopt the budget, and then, as Scott just said, you know, the adjustments be made by that,
Right.
Okay.
and then we sit
So I'll
down,
work
figure
on
out
those
where we
numbers.
wanna go from there.
And then you still have one more bite of the apple on the 5th. So it's not like the 28th is drop dead and then we all have to
Right.
stay here till midnight. We still have one more chance to get it done before I have to start putting it out for, you know, so many days for warning and publication.
So hopefully by then we'll get some idea of what effect all this stuff is gonna have on our tax rate.
Right.
Because that's what's gonna be the selling or,
Or,
you know, or disposal point of the budget
Right.
when you preach it, because it's Australian ballot again, so there's nothing to be decided, no changes to be made at town meeting, it's just information only. So
Right.
it's gonna be interesting going forward.
So it's either up or down, right? Up or down Australian
Yep.
ballot.
It's either gonna go or not, so
And what do you do when it doesn't go? Come back here and
Come back.
You get a
you gotta do it
second
again.
chance, right?
That's
I,
the problem with Australia.
the transfer from the equipment fund, it's 200,000, not 275, which is our normal.
Right. We dropped that because we put the other item on for the warning, and then also part of that is to fund some of the increases in some of his operating costs. So we have 150 that we're going to use for one of the trucks. He only has roughly 50 for the balance of what he needs for the year, and then we're going to ask for the other 150 as an article.
The 75,000, I assume we're talking about referring to the railroad station, correct?
No,
No?
that 75 is pretty much in his.
Oh, it's in there, oh, okay.
You know, just looking at some of his line items, right, his materials and supplies went from 70,000 to 100,000.
Yeah, I noticed
You
that.
know,
yeah, I
some
saw
of
that,
those
yeah.
items, and again, those are just guesstimates at this point, because we just don't know how much more it might go up in the spring and summer when he's actually out buying materials and doing the work, so there is a concern.
And There is, you got the letter, everybody got the letter in the packet about the town clerk position, the assistant town clerk. That's reflected in here.
Correct.
The other thing that I picked up was it's been adjusted on the updated budget list was the recommended listers project for the consultants that was not in the original draft that came out, and that was 12.6, so that's been added to the adjusted budget.
We did add that in. That was an oversight.
So what Kathleen requested is in here?
Yes. Money's in there for a full timer. We just have to decide whether it's needed, a full time or half time. Now Springfield just went and advertised for a half-time position, and that's what they did. I don't know what their hours are, but Springfield's got twice as many population as we do. And they're getting by with a half-time plus a full, so I don't know where you want to go with that, but.
Yeah, well, but we're not at that point yet. We still have.
No,
we
no,
still
but I
have,
just want to
highway
throw that on the
finish
table.
up here. So what's, let's go back to the equipment fund. Is there anything left over in that? Is there a balance in that, or have we tapped it out at this point for what?
I'm not sure what it looks like.
For
I'm still
this year,
waiting on
we're pretty much tapped out because we've committed the monies for the trucks that we haven't received.
Right.
So that money's been pretty much allocated. The only other major equipment purchase that we want to buy is a rock crusher, which was part of that state grant. And Andy's been looking, and we still haven't found anything yet that's worthwhile. So
Yeah, it's a stone screener for, what we do is, as part of the grant, it's a grants and aid, thing they just brought out as an equipment grant. And what you do is when, that they pay, during the grants and aid, what they do is they pay us to go out and bring our roads up to state standards, putting the stone line ditches in. Over the years, it fill, the ditches fill in gravel. Well, instead of dumping that stone over a bank somewhere and we save it, and then you gotta screen it to get, the fines out of it so we can reuse that stone. So, and also, it's something we need to look at in the near future too, is we have some big culverts in this town that are in horrible shape. And the grants to replace the big culverts are very competitive. We can't just keep waiting on grants for them. So it's something we need to start looking at. There's 3 on Leach Road that need to be done. FEMA, they said, those type of grants, even through FEMA, to bring that road, because we've been working with FEMA, those grants, even through them, is very competitive. But other ones, Green Mountain Turnpike, that culvert is shot. There's a culvert that goes up Oak Street in Sac River. It's a stone culvert, and the stones are falling out of it. I mean, it's something we need to think about, maybe doing one a year, it's start putting it in the budget, and then if we get the grant, hurrah, but it's something we need to look at. And I've already talked with a company that makes box culverts. I had to come out and look at Leach Road. And just for the culvert and then doing the engineering part of it in the steep stream alteration permit, it was like $75,000 just for that. So you're talking close, then you gotta hire the crane, you gotta hire a company to come in and do it. So you're looking at probably, $175,000, $180,000 per culvert. So it's something we need to look at doing in the future. So there's one culvert on Leach Road. I'm hoping we can get FEMA to take care of. There's a hole in the bottom of it. And when they were rebuilding the road, one of the triaxle dump trucks almost went through it. So something we need to look at.
Any other questions or comments on highway?
I guess the only thing that I'll mention is just, again, when you look at that debt schedule, one of the things that we were trying to avoid is in the past, you had budgeted and then borrowed for some of your truck purchases. So, you were stretching out some of these trucks for a 5-year window. And it became, I think, burdensome to try to figure that out on top of what your other needs were. So in this particular budget, as we talked about, we're done at this point, but we're at the last payments on the 18 and 19. We bought a 6 and a 10-wheeler. Those payments are done. And then, like we said, we did get the finish on the Brockway Mills project as well. So the idea, hopefully going forward, is that we can do these things with a combination of some of the grants, some of our taxpayer money, and then hopefully we're going to try to work with FEMA. We're going to try to work with some other organizations and see if the state does have some more money coming. We just haven't gotten it yet, as Sue had mentioned. There are some additional projects that might make our culverts eligible. And we're going to go after that money as well. But these are big numbers, as Andy said, so.
Scott, does ARPA money come into play at all?
It can on some of the stormwater related things, but they tend to get a little bit funny about that because they want you to do more green infrastructure than just culvert replacement. And most of the stuff that we're proposing is just simply upsizing. Because we've so there is some potential, but we're not proposing to do green infrastructure. These are just simply replacing culverts with, larger sizes because of the volumes that we're getting through these storms.
It seems as a result of climate change that upsizing culverts would be a green investment.
They've looked at other, we've been trying to deal with them on a couple of stormwater projects, and they're not as inclined to give us money just for upsizing. They want to give you money for green infrastructure and other kinds of more, what they call innovative approaches.
But then again, there could be something like that in this new town.
I'm hoping the
Round of
state
funding, we just don't
puts
know what it's
money
gonna be.
into the transportation portion and helps with that, I agree, so.
Okay.
So, because it's needed, and it's not just here, it's all over the state of Vermont.
For these trucks we have to purchase, do we have a set price? I can just imagine that could go up.
We actually
Between now and then.
went out earlier and asked him for a quote. We
Yeah,
want to lock in because he was having so much difficulty getting inventory that we wanted to get in early. So that's a quote that he's willing to honor.
I just gave it to him. It's actually from ATG, where we've done our truck. And they gave me a quote that they had a guy come out, look at our trucks and give me a price for the trade-ins and everything, so. If you guys want to see that too.
No, I mean, and that's why it's important that we do trade in and
Yes.
update these vehicles on a schedule that we get a good trade-in value.
And that's another thing is, like, if you look in the budget, what some of these vehicles, equipment is costing because the warranty is run out. And I mean, like the pickup I drive, for instance, the injection pump is gone. It's sitting at the garage. I refuse to put the money into it. We put a lot of money into it last year, and I refuse to put the money into it because it's going to be almost up to $10,000 to fix this truck because the injection pump has metal shavings. They found metal shavings in the fuel system, which came from the injection pump. Well, you got to replace the injection pump, you got to replace the injectors, clean the whole fuel system out. It's $7,000 to $10,000. You want to put that in a truck that's only worth $12,000. So as far as I'm concerned, that truck can sit there till the one I've ordered comes in. And then we'll figure out a way to get it running, drive it there and tell them not to shut it off. It's yours. I just don't want it, put money into something that, I don't want to go backwards, but keep that equipment scheduled. Just like our graders, the warranties run out. It's up at Nortrax right now, the clutch in it just disintegrated and they had to pull the motor out to change it. Warranty ran out on that. I can't wait to see the bill for that. So that's the thing is, these vehicles cost money especially with the new emissions and stuff too, and the dump trucks. I mean, every other town has, their dump trucks are 5 years, their equipment are 7 years, and they're gone, Why you got the warranty? As soon as the warranty runs out, we should get rid of it. And we will save a lot of money on, the $115,000 that's in there for parts. I mean, yeah, tires and stuff we'd have to replace and whatnot. We've been doing really good, but we also still got to keep, following that schedule.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're gonna fall behind. I mean, some of our equipment, we got one loader that's 21 years old. That loader gets used constantly. Luckily, it's keeping our fingers crossed. It's holding up. We're rebuilding the cabs on because they're rusting out. The bodies, so.
Using too much salt, that's a problem.
Yeah. That's one thing I'm not using a lot of.
Yeah, I know.
So we've been pretty good on that.
One thing I will notice though, out on our street, that well house up there,
Yeah,
you gotta try and keep away from that.
yeah. Well, a new guy was salting out there the other day, so
No
last
big
year, the
deal.
guy
It's
spoke to
not
the
like,
guy.
not like the putting down a ton of it, but
No.
it,
Yep.
so I just thought I'd mention
I'm
that. I
kind
know
of
it's a
juggling
new guy,
people.
And
Guys have been, in these storms, we've been kind of juggling people around to make up for the guy being out, you know, so it's, you know.
no, I just thought I'd mention it. just 'cause,
Yep, oh no, I usually tell them, like, the guy that was salting it last year, I harped on him about it, and I think towards the middle of winter it worked
Yeah,
out, so.
it evened itself out, but I know that, you
Yep.
know, the neighbors get nervous about it.
Yep,
so.
no, I'll tell them too, whoever salts out there, I'll let them know. Yep.
Okay, anything else for Andy on the highway? Seeing none, I guess you're free to,
Thank you,
or
Andy.
you want to hang out with the rest of us and have fun?
I'll just go home and watch it.
Thank
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Keep the boys' morale up.
Yeah,
Can't lose anybody.
they're the ones that do the work, they make me look good.
Well, that's okay. Okay, let's try to, review the general government budget.
Okay, while we're doing that, since I got Ryan here, can we just put Ryan in the hot seat so he doesn't have
Oh,
to
sure.
sit here for
He
the
needs
rest
to
of
be
the
in the hot
evening?
seat. Look, he's all dressed for it. He's got shorts on.
He's ready. Well, I don't think that never changes.
Yeah, he's not the follow the hose.
So Ryan's budget's pretty much again, and, you know, we're doing a lot of estimating on a lot of his costs, because the issue, quite frankly, is COVID. And, you know, like, we're giving our best estimates and best guesses as to what we might, you know, what we're hoping that we have a regular summer. That's the goal, but at this point, we just don't know. So maybe, Ryan, with that as a little introduction, you can sort of jump in or add on to whatever you think you might want to.
Well, the biggest thing is trying to keep, like Andy's keeping kids from jumping ship and keeping, my employees for 2, 3, 4 years instead of just get one kid and training them all 1 year and then they're leaving for another job. I usually keep kids, some 3 to 5 years, 6 years. I mean, I got one employee, I think 10 years with me, which is good. But the minimum wage is going up, and a lot of other places are paying kids more money, so it's hard to find like lifeguards. So Scott and I talked about, we bumped it up, starting pay. So when we had to bump up starting pay, we had to bump up everyone. That was the biggest thing especially for lifeguard pay and stuff like that.
Can you talk about Saxon's River Day Camp? Because I know that we budgeted at 12,000 in the past couple of years. There hasn't really been much going on, so.
2 years ago, we didn't have it, and this last year we had it. It was attended okay, not as well as it has been.
Right.
But I think next year, I think as every year as COVID, I think goes on, it's gonna get better and better. The biggest hit that took us was that, the school system put that free camp for the summer. So they did a free camp and they had 60, 70 kids, Westminster had one, Saxon River had one, and Bell Falls had one. So they had 40, 50 kids in each one.
Right.
So that took, our numbers down. We still average most weeks 10 to 12 kids instead of 18 to 20. So.
Right, so we didn't put 12,000 in for
No.
the budget because we just aren't sure. So we're hoping that if we do offer something, it'll break even and keep it as close to break even as we can. So it's really, it's reflected if you look at page 3, you'll see prior years where we had budgeted 12,000 and, as Ryan said, we've been impacted by some other things. So we're just keeping that basically out of the budget, and if we do, with the offering itself, we'll make it as close to break even as we can. So it won't materially impact the budget.
Question, Ryan, if we're competing with the school department, is there any possibility that we could merge into one camp? Or is that?
Theirs is under like a federal grant. I mean, they kind of do it with us. They come up and use their pool.
Yep.
So I do make money. I mean, so they pay for the use of the pool. To come up there. That's basically the only way we kind of merge together.
Okay. So
I also merge throughout the year. Like I get to use their facilities here and there, and then they get to come up there and use that during the fall and the spring.
so there's some collaboration.
Oh yeah, just constant, yeah.
Good.
Except for just this year, COVID, there's just no, we couldn't have adult volleyball again this year because of the outside stuff.
Right.
But the high school is allowing us to have youth basketball on weekends, so,
All right.
which was good. I was happy for that. At least we're getting 2 days a week for the kids to come up and play.
Yeah, access to gyms was an issue with the school district in COVID, and I understand it, you know, they were very, but it impacted our programming, so. We have no real capital plan, you know, the pool itself, we're gonna do a little bit of work, but mostly with our guys, you know.
We just have, we have a small leak, popped up through the, basically the same general area by where the diving board used to be, off to the right next to the pump house. But Andy and them fixed that. Oh geez, I have to look up my pictures. I think it was 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. So I think it's time at the pool now. It's pipes that were attacked by the termites. That was 3 years ago, so we fixed it. I think it's time just to fix that. The other side, the majority of the main, like 80% of the pipes are already been fixed, because most all the pipes that go to the pool go to the left, and all those were fixed. So you're talking about 2 filters and 1, 2, I think 6 or 8 returns. So it's not really as big as of a project as it was already. They already have a trench dug out already, so they already basically know how it goes.
So we'll just absorb most of that cost with our own manpower, and didn't really put a budget in there just because I think we're gonna deal with it mostly in-house, so. That's good. But there is no other real capital we program for the parks or anything specific.
So it's straightforward and same things, and
We'll see, you know, how COVID treats us, that's basically where this budget fluctuates, so. And Ryan's good about if there are issues that impact his staffing, he adjusts it accordingly, so I don't worry about, you know, rooms full of kids sitting around doing nothing. He's pretty good about keeping his staffing and his participation pretty good, so,
even on the rainy days.
which I appreciate.
Are the mosquitoes ready if we ever get snow?
Oh, I knew that question. Yeah. I had the guy coming in he was supposed to come in last week, but then he got busy. And he's busy this week, so he's gonna be, there's no snow in the forecast anyway, so I was like, I'm not worried about it, but everything, yeah, it's all ready. Got mowed. Buck Adams did that again. And I went up there with my daughters, did the rope line and all around the ski hut and the warming hut motor room. Did the motor room, just checked all the oil, greased up all the bars and all that stuff.
Right.
Checked the ropes fine, and swept all the mice out of the warming hut.
Might
Ski
get a
toes
little
ready.
snow on Saturday, we'll see.
Ski hill's ready. Ice rink is out. I just gotta assemble that this week still. I have it laying out just to get the tarp ready. Flatten that out, and so we'll have the ice rink going, the sled hill, and hopefully ski toe. Again,
Able to hijack any help for that, putting that together? I mean, do you
For what?
getting the kids putting the rink together?
I do it myself, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, I try to eliminate using the town guys as much as possible.
Yeah.
So, because they are, you know, they're out cold, so I've been trying to do as much. I've been putting that together since I started. I usually get I would get volunteers to work at the high
That's
school.
what I'm just saying.
I go football kids the whole time. You need community service? Yep, hey, come on, let's go. So I usually get 2 or 3 kids. Like I had 2 of them up with me that, you know, we laid all the wood out, got the tarp out. That's a 3-person job. I did it with my family last year.
Yeah.
Brought my 3 daughters, my wife, and we pulled the tarp out and folded it and stuff like that. But the tarp, that'd be the only thing I probably have to buy a new one soon was one of those, because then you get all holes. That's like $2,000 or $3,000, one of those. But getting right up there. I make it do.
Any other questions or comments for Brian? Okay. That's all right.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
Take care, everyone. Good job with the football team.
That's only the 6th championship, undefeated championship. 50 years.
That's impressive. It's good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
All good stuff.
Boys worked hard for that. Okay, now can we do the general?
All right, so thank you for your indulgences, yes.
That's okay, you keep changing. your mind.
Yeah, we'll go back to where we started, which was just looking at the basic general fund. So there's a couple of items that were in your packet I think Peter had referenced earlier, Kathleen had prepared a memo. She's out of the office. So she did put together her considerations in writing. So hopefully the board had a chance to at least take a look at that. We did increase her staffing request based on that request. We've made a few modifications in recycling to reflect some changes in some of our contracts, as well as we're hoping that, again, with the changes that you've made in the tipping fees, that we're getting closer to our break-even point. The biggest challenge with that is going to be, again, we're up against the staffing issue, and we're in that same sort of competition, even with our part-timers, where right now we're holding our own. We've lost a few, but we've been able to gain a few, and I'm hopeful that we can keep that without having to go through what we're talking about with the guys that are plowing and with CDLs in the highway. So at this point, I have not made a recommendation to make an increase in that specifically. The only other item that I did add some money in the recycling center budget specifically to look at changing out where the current tires and the food scrap recycling is. That shed, if you ever take a look at it, has got a pretty severe lean to it and is on its last legs. So we'd like to get that replaced in the spring with more of an open air kind of pavilion kind of setup. And then we can hopefully just put the tires underneath there in a container so they're not getting wet. And then do the same with the food scraps. So it would be more of an open air kind of pavilion sort of setup there. I'm just not sure exactly when we're going to do that. It's weather dependent. But I think we can do that pretty much without a substantial amount of additional capital.
Would that be a prefab building you were talking about for the?
It'd be kind of, well, we're looking at a couple of options. Looks more like a picnic pavilion because it won't be open on the sides. Yeah, and it'll be tall enough to where we can drag a container under it, so we can drag it in and out, especially for the tires. You just can't leave the tires out with mosquitoes and water accumulation. So that's really the only major investment we're looking at there. And then the only other thing, the finance office at this point, we've got our new finance director, and Alyssa's been working hard on the budget, and she's also on Zoom if you have any questions specific to her, but I do appreciate, it's tough to walk in a new job and then have everything dumped on your lap. Hey, by the way, did you put a budget together?
Yeah.
But she doesn't even have a key to the front door, or, here's the copier, while you're at it, why don't you do a budget? So she's been great, and I appreciate her patience. Because there's a lot of things when you're brand new, as you guys know, you're trying to catch up to speed on a lot of stuff, and she's been great. So that's been very helpful to me. So we're keeping pretty much most of that status quo. My office, I still have some money I'm hoping to hire somebody. And we talked about sharing that position again, as we did prior with the clerk's office. So maybe be a part-time in both. I've got a couple of people and some resumes. I'm trying to schedule some interviews and seeing if that's possible, because it does impact just our general administration, putting together packets, trying to keep up with appointments, trying to keep up with, now the next thing we have to do is a town report. It's all these administrative actions that just take time and energy. They're not terribly difficult. It's just time. And so I think that's the kind of stuff that, has been a problem without having a person in that position. And you guys were around long enough to appreciate how having somebody there helps make all these other things run a little more smoothly. So that'll be the next priority, that we're going to try to get that position filled.
So
That would be, I'm sorry, fine.
that's this EA to manager
Yes,
line?
right.
And you would get somebody doing that job for $12,000?
Well, if we split it with the clerk's office, because she's put some more money in, you could get somebody at a full-time salary. And then you're able to use their, in two different places. I don't need somebody all day, every day, quite frankly, but there are times when it's, labor intensive, and kind of the same thing in the clerk's office. Kathleen has some periods where she's really busy with elections and then things aren't as busy other times of the year. So
Yeah,
I think there's a way that we could possibly share that and make that work.
But it would be a full-time position, split
Correct.
amongst different.
Full-time with benefits.
But I mean, still, we have to remember, that's a full-time position that's replacing really 3 positions. Prior to
It's
your
less than
arrival.
ideal, but I think it's at
Right.
least better than, yes, I
Yeah.
agree with Sue. It's less than ideal, but it's better than where we are. And I'm just not sure at the moment that we're able to, if I added a full-time administrative assistant, it's probably at least a $50,000 a year position plus benefits. So, which would then,
so this thing is gonna be $24,000 a year for a person to split?
Part of it is split with the village, right?
there's also a village portion of that as well.
Oh, the village has to pay the
Correct.
same, okay,
Right.
all right. And then they get, they are full-time, and they do get
Correct.
benefits, okay.
Correct.
I was gonna say, you're never gonna get anybody.
Oh, I know. And trust me, it's a competitive, again, you guys are well aware, I'm not telling you, you don't know.
Yeah,
All of these positions are incredibly competitive right now. So,
Questions on some of this here.
yes,
Office operations,
give me a page, Peter.
the, 7, I guess.
7.
Seven. It's the, town hall phone internet. Is that real number, 25,000? What the heck are we doing there?
No, page 6.
I was gonna say, I'm looking at page 7, let's see it.
It's page 6.
And what item number?
Item number, down towards that bottom section.
Okay,
There has been a couple of things that were in here that were not in here before. And we're still trying to figure out all of the pieces of this. It's the, part of it is server and internet costs that have increased. Part of it is our wireless system. We've had to do some additional work on, in fact, we were just working this week with some additional wiring, trying to improve the wireless for this basement so that these types of things work. So we now have 2 rooms that'll be wired for that, and there are some costs that go with that. And I have to see what the balance of that is too, Peter. So I'll give you the breakdown on that total number. I don't recall all that off the top of my head.
Well, we had also upgraded to some other different system, which we thought would be cheaper, and it became very expensive. And that's what you're still running, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not all that phone system.
Yeah.
There's other pieces of this that we've added to that. So
so this is more of a one-time cost to
No.
get things all squared away, or?
no, there's going to be additional overhead on this because the phones themselves are running under voice over IP, and then we've got other issues that have been related to maintaining the integrity of our wireless systems and all the security required with that, and then the backups that are required for that, because we've had to add additional cybersecurity on top of that because of some of the concerns that we talked about with other communities where they've had financial losses based on some of these cyber issues. So that's gone up.
So you think this is gonna be?
I think this is going to be a real number going forward, but I'll give you a better breakdown on that.
Oh, my God.
who manages, do you manage the IT issues or does Chuck or who's the manager?
Well, it's a little bit of a issue by committee. Pete, Chuck does some, Gary does some, I do some. So it's sort of, we don't have an IT person per se. So we all sort of take turns trying to figure out who can jump in. If, in the perfect world, if we were able to say, God, if we could have all the things we would like to have, it'd still be nice to have a maintenance person of some sort for facilities, because we still don't have that. So we're relying on a variety of contracts and staff people jumping in to maintain the buildings and some of the projects that go on in the buildings. And then internet and just in general, the IT services portion of what we do, which would include trying to drive more transactions to the web, trying to update our land use records so people don't have to come in and get lister cards, for example, they'd be available online. None of those things right now are programmed in the budget. Quite frankly, as we go forward, are going to be issues that we need to start to address.
As that number gets higher and higher, does it reach a point where hiring an IT person who would take care of that stuff would be more cost efficient?
Given the cost of project work with IT, I'd say that makes sense. Because not only can they help us evaluate where we should be investing our money and which technologies, but they can also, I think, help us better manage the technologies once they're in place, and we can do better with our training and implementation. So we have real gaps, and you know, it's going to be an issue for us as we're trying to become more online friendly, more transactional online, and more internet friendly. And you know, we're struggling a little bit with that right now.
More and more government services are going online, and that
I agree. And the problem with it is we talked about, there's more cybersecurity concerns with that. There's more cost with that. The convenience is a nice factor, but we also have an interesting mix of people here in the community. A lot of folks don't like to do their transactions online. They will come in and still present something at a window and want Pam or Brenda or somebody to give them a receipt.
right.
You know, taxes. It's amazing to me what people come in and pay. And, you know, because they want to physically hand it to a body and get some sort of acknowledgement or receipt that they transacted that business. And we still do a lot of in-person transactional business in this office, a lot.
Are you open to other questions?
I'm open, sure.
Okay, the tax sale, I must be here somewhere, but the revenue and expenses for the tax sale, where would that?
Well, if you look on the first page, and so you go, in the previous years, there had been a discussion at the board level to add just a number, right? And that they were gonna do these annual tax sales, and they thought they would come up with some sort of number. Well, that didn't really happen. So we took that 18,000 out of the budget for 2023. So quite frankly, any revenue that's received from a tax sale would basically be revenue. It's not in the current, budget. It would just be something that would be extra. So it would accrue to your bottom line, but we didn't budget for it. We just don't know what we're gonna get.
Right, so we've got $500,000 outstanding roughly.
In a perfect world, you could get $500,000, but in the real world, you're gonna get 100 to 200,000, I'm guessing, and that's a guess. And then there's expenses and overhead and stuff that comes out of that too.
Right.
So, but that's not recognized in any of this. And we took the $18,000 out from previous years.
And it'll take a lot more of Alyssa's time, right?
It's gonna take a lot more of the finance office time. Alyssa, Pam, Brenda, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
The unsafe buildings,
Yes.
maybe just wording I'm reading here, it says unsafe building expense of 40,000.
What page are we on?
Well, I got 13, but that's
Oh,
my
you're
old.
oh, you're not
that's my
looking
old
at this one.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the old one. Right. That's why I
Probably
didn't know. I
12.
couldn't make any
You
notes
said
on it.
13. So it might be 12. I think they're one page. No.
No.
It's on
Oh,
page-
it's page 11 on
Page
the new-
11.
new version.
halfway down. We've got 40,000. Is that the reserve that we're putting in? Is that what?
That's your annual reserve.
Oh, well, it just threw me when it just said expense, so that's my question was, that's gonna be the reserve.
Right.
No, we usually put 50 in because we've got that Backer Street property, that burned out property. I don't know, we're probably gonna be our next target to get that one down. As it looks. I don't see any movement on that one. So that one's probably not gonna be as expensive as the Y, but because it's half burned out anyway, so it shouldn't take much to take that down, but another deal from Hodgkins, like here's the last one, we'll probably be in good shape on that one.
But that one still is, that even doesn't even have.
We don't know where that stands at this point.
We'll give you an update because Chuck's been doing some work and we've been talking about some things. And so it's not ready yet for the board for public, but there are some things that have been moving. So I think we're moving in the direction.
Cause then you got Henry Street Extension, that one where the tree came down on, it's been out sitting there for 7 years, I'm sure that's
You
not.
got Hatfield Street, you got.
Very good shape with all the
Yeah,
water
there's a
that
half
can get
dozen
inside
spots
that.
where we could spend money on derelict buildings.
But there's a complication with that, supposedly about a bankruptcy issue or something, from what I understand, last word I got, so.
Yeah,
Well, that's the problem with all of us. I mean, it's not, we don't own these properties, so.
No,
it's
I
not
know
like
that, but
that
I
we
mean,
can-
you know.
Well, I mean, I'm just, that's for the public, you know, it's not like.
That one should be on tax sale, but then again, I think that's the complication that's gonna come into that one. Where do we where do you think we're gonna fly out on the cinema?
well,
I know we've got a budget in there, but there's some talk about the SV that,
there's a
Shuttered
couple
venue
pieces to
grant.
the cinema. We've got the shuttered venue grant, so there'll be $140,000 that will be reimbursed back through that grant. Then there's a discussion that there might be an amendment to that grant where we might be able to apply for additional monies. And we just don't know where that is yet. So we've done some preliminary work for that, but it won't be anywhere close to 140,000. I don't believe. And there, I don't know if we even looked at the preliminary number, what might be coming potentially. So,
Maybe 35, 40,000.
right. So. And again, all the cinema revenues and all of those expenses are based on the idea that we're still not in a COVID shutdown kind of mode, that we're operating. Again, when you look at where the cinema revenues are, Charlie and Red have done a great job with the advertising, sponsorships, and we're struggling with people coming to the movies. And it's not just us, it's all across the country. People are not going to the movies unless it's a comic book, one of those Marvel movies where, you know, it's a $1 billion franchise. Movies in general are down dramatically. And we're experiencing the same things. So,
It looks like revenue from rentals. I'm seeing a proposal here for the Into the Woods, David Stern production. It just came to you and me and that looks encouraging.
the live events have done, the few that we've had have done surprisingly well. So there is some hope for that. I think that the real concern is just the cinema portion.
Yeah.
It really impacted.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's cheaper if you stream it and have your whole
Yeah.
family watch it at home than it is to go
Yeah.
to the theater. And then you don't have your kids bugging for candy.
First,
But just
more and
like,
more you've seen advertisements of some of these other movies come out that's only in theaters, so I don't know if that's, I've only seen 4.
and they're not doing very well, so I
Yeah.
think the streaming is the
killing us, yeah.
future for
Yeah.
theater, unfortunately. But just, I have a question unrelated to the budget, though. I
Okay.
know we had a lot at that screening a couple weeks ago of The Grinch. Are people required to wear masks in the cinema if they're not eating at the time?
No, we have not.
Because our numbers were 50 cases in the last week in Rockingham. So,
Well, at the joint board, it was, the consensus was not to impose it,
Correct.
but as time goes on, it might be, because the other thing you've got enforcement, who's gonna chase these guys down? You've gotta have somebody standing, I noticed, I was walking around town today, down the street, most of the stores have, masks required on them. So even the post office, which is unusual, but hey, if you wanna go in the lobby, you have to have a mask on. You
but
can-
for something that we run, like the cinema, I would think that we could make that as.
Well, Scott addressed that at the
strongly
last meeting, he said that, the town hall was comfortable without masks, but
Right.
I don't know,
Yeah, but that, I mean, the town hall, if you're Pam sitting at her desk alone most of the day, that's different than you have 300
well, I
people
agree with you
show
that,
up
that's
for a
why I
movie.
say, I wasn't gonna really venture a discussion tonight on it, unless you said.
Well, it's just a question. I was just a yes or no
Discuss
question.
and see if the town, because the question rose that if the town wanted to put either a voluntary mask mandate on that we don't enforce, unless it's really abusive, that, because how are you gonna chase it and you find them, it's a court process, and then you gotta have a waiver fee that they don't go to court, and it's a mess if you read the VLCT hand guide for it, so.
Yeah, well,
And then Debbie brought up the fact, well, if the town enacts one, does that, does the village have to abide by it? So,
People entering a cinema.
It's like-
pretty easy to-
here we go.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm thinking the cinemas is separate, for me, that's a separate thing than what
It
we're
could
talking
be only
about.
just in the
Yeah.
Yeah, and
cinema
also
because
you
of the
just say you
crowd.
don't come in if you don't have a mask on.
I mean, they will be eating ice, popcorn
Yeah,
and all that
right.
stuff, but anyway, only because the numbers were really scary.
Yeah, I know, it's starting to get up there, yeah.
50 in
Yeah,
one
where
week.
do you find that information?
State Department, the state.
State website pushes it out. I don't know when they update it though. Is it every Monday?
I
Something
think
like
it's
that.
every Monday,
I think so.
In Rockingham?
in Rockingham,
Ooh, that's the one.
between the 1st and the 8th of, they're slightly behind, 1st and the 8th or whatever. it
Yeah.
is.
A lot of those were kids in schools, right? Some of those were kids in schools.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a spike. There's no doubt about it. So,
I mean, if there's interest in it, we can discuss it under the business. We can't take any actions on it because it's not on the agenda, but if for the next meeting, we could, if we wanted to enact one, we could do something, but that's up to the
Well,
board.
that's probably another reason why a lot of people don't want to go. That's why I don't want to go.
Right.
Good movies.
yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if you're gonna.
Okay, we done with the budget stuff? We done beating the budget up for tonight or?
I think the only thing that we didn't mention, and since Gary's here, I'll bring it up, is that we're finishing up our submissions for the fire equipment grants. I know we talked about those at prior meetings. So that might impact us just in relationship to, there is a small portion of a match for that, and it's a reimbursement grant, but those are going out this week, and they're not reflected in your budget for the fire services. So again, they're competitive grants. We don't know if we'll receive it. It's good news if you do, because then, that means that we're gonna have an opportunity to replace quite a bit of equipment at a very reasonable rate. But I think, Gary, the totals that we're looking at for the 3 departments, so it's Saxon's River volunteers, are town of Rockingham, plus Bellows Falls Village is also, we do it as a combined grant.
Yeah,
So-
the matches are only 5%, so, and some of the grants are looking at like $2,000, some of them, $5,000 or $7,000, but no huge numbers. And we certainly wouldn't get all of them, they're extremely competitive. There's, so many fire departments. When they have the webinars to learn about them, there's hundreds of fire chiefs on there watching it.
Yeah. So it's an issue, it's really an issue in relationship to, as we start talking about, there's a couple of sort of odd capital items. So when you look at that capital list, we're pretty level until you get into fiscal year 25, with 2 of these that have lump sum payouts at the end, and they're listed on here. They're both notes that relate to 2019. One was for a rescue vehicle, one was for a pumper truck, but it's pretty much level in the debt. And then in 25 fiscal year, you have a $45,000 buyout on that pumper truck, on the rescue, and a $154,000 buyout on that pumper truck. So that's a fairly substantial amount for that fiscal year 25. Just wanted to again bring that to the board's attention. It's on that long-term debt schedule. So we're a few years out from that.
Yeah, but should we be putting money into those reserve funds first, so we're not hit?
Well, if we don't get the equipment that we're requesting, I think we're gonna have to have a conversation about how we want to look at that going forward. And then also, what the other item that we're talking about is this potential feasibility study, and so it all sort of wraps together. So I'll sort of hold off on some of that commentary, I think, until we get to that item, which is also on your agenda.
There are the 2 large items. There's Rockingham and Saxon's River each have like a brush truck, rescue truck type vehicle. It's $160,000. So that's this 7 to whatever 5% of that is the
Right.
$7,000 to $10,000 match piece.
But if we get the grant,
Yes.
because also 2025, I mean, we're talking bridges as well.
Mhm.
So we're
Yeah.
talking big hits. And we want to try to keep it stable and not jump up like this year to year. So.
Right. So we
may
didn't
wanna
propose
consider
anything
putting-
specific for a sinking fund for that. I think to be fair to the board, until we get a sense of where we might be with the grants and then going back and talking about to the fire equipment committee, then coming back to you, it's really gonna be a fiscal year 24 and 25 problem. But I think it's important to at least be aware of it, because I agree with Sue. It's never good to come back and say you got a $300,000 or $400,000 spike, and now you're gonna have to cut your paving budget in half. You're gonna have to, it creates real, dramatic issues in budgeting. So we're trying to avoid that.
Any other questions?
One thing, expense, there's
What page are you on?
for page 12,
Page 12? Okay.
we have tree maintenance, $5,000. I've been talking with our tree warden, and in the past, what he's been doing is just taking funds, working with the highway department for a tree planting. But he is interested in, if we would want to look at increasing that line item for tree maintenance and having that more its own thing instead of, tucking it into the highway.
Well, there's no shortage of problematic trees or trees that need attention. So it's an issue. We didn't change that number just because I think in the highway in general, there was so much price pressure on his just general supplies that we didn't increase that. But certainly that's something that the board's interested in. We could put it into a revision and come back to you and see how it impacts the bottom line and tax rate. If that's something you want us to take a look at.
I would definitely favor that. And I think, has Cass talked to you about his tree planting plan for the year or not?
No. I mean, we've talked in general terms, not in real money terms. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's kind of two things here there's just general tree maintenance and tree planting plans, but there's also the elm borer, whatever that. Emerald ash borer issue, and we have a lot of ash trees on Atkinson Street. And it won't be long before that, I mean, it's in all.
When
of
it
our
comes, it
surrounding
goes
towns.
quickly.
It's
Yeah,
gonna,
they're really amazing.
I mean, might want to think about being a little preemptive there.
That's a good idea.
Okay, I'll work up some numbers for that.
And would we ever want to invite Cass in to talk about that stuff or not, or would you prefer to deal with him directly?
If you guys would like, I can ask him to come to the 28th.
I think the trees are so important in terms of the heat island stuff. I wouldn't mind hearing his plan. Just for 10 minutes. Would anyone?
Okay, I'll ask him to
I
come.
would love to look at it more.
Okay, we'll certainly do that.
Ellen, did you have a question you want to ask her?
Oh, I thought, since we were talking about fire department stuff, we could segue into agenda number 8.
I'm sorry. I should have said something earlier. We jumped everyone around. I'm sorry, Ellen. I should have asked you to do
You
that.
were tentatively throwing the hand. I should-
We should in fairness smooth that up. She's been sitting here patiently.
Oh, sorry, it's all new to me. Is that okay with you? Yeah. Okay.
Andy said before that you felt like it was.
You're on trial, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that's a job interview.
We need to get a spotlight.
No, that wouldn't be intimidating at all.
Really, make you sweat.
So first of all, I'm Ellen Clark Lawrence. I am a trustee for the Village of Saxon's River. I am a newbie to all this, so Peter got to see my newness last night doing a meeting, and so did Scott. Gary has been a great help to me, so I really appreciate that. The reason for my being here is there's a feasibility study, and This feasibility study is something that the trustees for the Village of Saxons River unanimously agreed to commit $5,000 in funds towards this feasibility study. It's only a commitment that we're looking for from the town of Rockingham. It is the study, the feasibility grant, if we're awarded it, is $20,000. 5,000 would come from Saxons River, 5,000 would come from the town of Rockingham, and 10,000 would come from a USDA grant. There is no commitment from, excuse me, there's no money up front for the application for this. It's right now at a point where we're just applying for the grant. The grant is due December 17th and Gary has been working on it. So I'm here to ask if we would be able to have support of the town for $5,000 to commit for this feasibility study. And the feasibility study, it is the actual, what is it for? It's to show purpose and need. What areas are being protected by the fire department, response time, travel time. We would also indicate coverage areas. We have done these studies in the past, but I guess nothing's current and needs to be current. It would also cover locations of stations to each other and the areas that they service. It would also, as a result of this feasibility study, it would present alternatives for everyone. It's not to say, no, you can't have a fire department or you shouldn't have a fire department. It's to say, this is what's being recommended. And then you have the experts to come in and tell you, okay, this is how you handle it. So there's no cost to apply for the grant. It's just the commitment of $5,000. I would like to also say this is not reinventing the wheel for what has been done already, because a lot of time and effort has already gone into this from Saxons River for the fire department. I have in front of me all the work that has been done for the years, starting in 2013. And thankfully, all this information is needed to apply for the grant. So it's been very useful for Gary to have this information, and you can see the dedication and support that's been there for this fire department. So I'm hoping that you'll all consider committing $5,000 to support this feasibility grant. The grant is very competitive. There's no guarantee that we will be, that we'll win the grant. And if in fact we do win the grant, there is no obligation to accept the award, and then have to give the $20,000. It also isn't my decision. If we did in fact get awarded this opportunity, we would then all meet. It would be, having all the fire departments get together and the town, the village get together. So it would be something where we would all decide, okay, we've been awarded the opportunity to do this feasibility study. Now, do we want to actually go ahead with it? So it's no obligation, but it's just that we have this deadline on December 17th.
Question?
Sure.
Where did the firehouse in Saxon River fit into this?
Well, the fire station is located right now. Do you know where?
I do.
Okay, so the second floor is condemned,
Mhm.
and part of the research that's been done through the years is to find different locations, and they've also come back with some architectural designs for new buildings, but the costs have been prohibitive. There are estimates of like $1.2 million, then it was cut back to $800,000. And then there was like a post and beam structure, which I think was in the neighborhood of around $500,000 or so, if I remember correctly.
If you're talking about the proposal for Martin Building, it's not a post and beam, it's similar to that, but it's
Like
a
a
concrete base and the walls are, and the framing is all connected to the concrete base. They have two versions. You can do like Grafton did.
Yeah, that's right.
Grafton put their post into the ground. Ours was the one that we got quoted. I dealt with that whole process. Martin was that
Yeah, that one.
they would do the whole work completely right through. It will be done. The only problem is where the location was. We were dealing with the location currently. The problem with that is that when Irene came through, there were 6 inches of water in that building. And doing some further research back in 1960s, when Hurricane Donna came through, 12 feet of that riverbank was washed away on that side, which is why you don't have any room to navigate down there. So that's in the floodplain right now, that building. It's not going to deter from, according to what we've heard from all our people who have talked to A&R, it's not going to deter from building building in that same place. There's some precautions going to have to be taken. It may have to be raised up, you know, and protected from the river. So that being said, the Morton buildings, I know they give you a 50-year warranty on the building. And they give you a 25-year warranty on it. It's written right in there. There's a warranty, it's right in the package.
Yep.
Any general contractor, if you do a stick built building, they're not gonna come, if you have your house built, they're not gonna give you a 50-year warranty on your building. They prefab most of the buildings and they bring everything to the site and put it right up. So it only takes them like 2 months to do this station. Now, Grafton did it with volunteer help. So there's, I think back in 1980s, in 1991, I think that was put up. Cost them like $175,000, I think, if I remember correctly. But they did a lot of work themselves. When we went around knocking on doors, well, people, there wasn't any, nobody wanted to volunteer to do any work. So consequently, they didn't want to play with that, and it went back to going to architect. They spent $42,000 to hire an architect to draw up these plans, and then they started chopping the plans apart. The last meeting I was at, and that, you know, everybody at this point got frustrated and gave up. So Ellen, I wish you luck, but anyway.
Well, and I've lived in Saxon's River since 1994.
You know,
this has been something that I know has been talked about since I've lived there. I mean, it's but then, and this, the whole thing about the building too, that's a ways away, because this feasibility study has to happen first. And so we even have to, I mean, like, it's, you know, kind of like baby steps, because we have to figure out first if we get accepted for it, and then if we want to do it, and then what, if we do choose to do it, what the report says, and then how to figure out approaching it. So
what's the timeline then? Would this end up going into next fiscal year if by the time you get the grant in, get it submitted?
Well, the grant is
answer?
due this week, on the 17th, and I think it's going to be a few months, isn't it, Gary? Yeah, because there's two parts to it. The state grant to get it in, which is competitive, that deadline is the 17th, Friday. But if we miss that deadline, then it goes into the larger pool, which is the national one, which is April. So that's even more competitive. So it's just a matter of getting in the application.
So this might hit us next fiscal year, not this fiscal year. It's
the
5,000.
And are the chiefs of the other two fire departments, are they on board with this feasibility study? Have they been part of the?
And I apologize for that, because this came about kind of quickly. And me being a newbie, I kind of just jumped on it and I talked to Art about it.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh yeah.
There are two other fire departments.
Yeah.
Right.
So that I take responsibility for. We did talk about it in the village trustees meeting. And then we also did talk about it in the fire.
We had a generic discussion about it in our last fire equipment committee meeting, just talking about the need for feasibility. We didn't get into the specific numbers. So the chiefs are aware of it.
But they wouldn't object to it.
No, I think everybody wants to get the feasibility portion done, because it's really important to understand what our needs are, what our response times look like, and then what's a reasonable thing to do going forward. And without doing the feasibility work, we're just all sort of, you're guessing. This is the data you really need to make that decision.
And from what I understand, or what I had seen, $42,000 has already been spent on all of this information so far. So I would hate to see us not be able to, I don't want that money that's been spent to be in vain. And thankfully, this information is useful for Gary to go forward for the application. for the feasibility.
So this benefits the whole town, not just Saxon.
Right, absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right,
We use
that's-
all of our
that's-
run data and aggregate everything and then try to come up with what our alternatives might be. And then they'll look at costs, they'll look at response times, they'll look at equipment mix, they'll look at all the things that go into it.
All right,
So that's very helpful, no matter what we do.
sounds good.
So
Bonnie.
Would the feasibility study address the issue of moving the Saxons River Fire Station to another location? Would that be part of the mix of considerations?
I believe it would be, it's
Yeah.
part of, because with this feasibility study, it would tell you, okay, with the locations of these fire
Yeah, that's what you
departments.
were saying,
Yeah,
I think.
you know, this is their coverage area, this is the response time, this is the travel time, this is the cost that's involved in all of that.
And all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it seems like if you're ever gonna do anything with that fire station, you need a study like this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and didn't hear, we just got a grant yesterday about for the, municipal planning grant for the West End Road, right?
Yes, yes.
Can you see an intersection between these two things? or no?
Sure, yes. So as you're, go through your bid process and hiring the consultants and having your conversations and kickoff meetings, you talk about challenges that you have. And so in both studies, as you're working with the consultants, the conversation would come up about the fire station, the challenges. So the consultants working on the revitalization of the west side of the village would hear about, yes, there's a fire station there, and we're looking for a feasibility study to address where the assets are that we're protecting and what the feasibility is for station locations and best alternatives and that sort of thing. And same with the feasibility study, they would hear that we have a study that's looking at the design for the west end of the village. And there is open property there. Sure. Good. Okay, thanks. And I just want to clarify that the application will go in this Friday if the board decides to authorize it and makes a motion to authorize the municipal manager to, sign all the documents and file the application, then it will go in. We're just about done with it. And as Ellen was saying, that all of that work that's gone before, the consultants will have that to work with, and just the process of updating is easier than, reinventing the wheel. But so that's the
Can
motion that's
we
being looked for.
do a motion now?
Before we get to that, a couple of questions. Again, Gary, I'm gonna ask you, why is not the village of Saxon River the prime applicant instead of the town of Rockingham?
So the community facilities program, Andrea Antolin Allen, who's our the liaison for that program for USDA Rural Development, said that the villages of Saxon's River as an entity is not eligible as an applicant for the community facilities grant.
And why is that?
I don't know.
I mean, they are a municipality, they're their own governmental issue, they have their own board, they have budget for their fire department.
How is it organized? Is it incorporated village?
I don't know,
I couldn't find it on the state statutes. I did look a little when she said that.
they do have bylaws, I know that, but I don't know
Oh, I'm sorry, I think I have an
if
answer.
it's incorporated or not, that I don't know.
I'm sorry to interrupt. And I apologize because I thought that she had included Gary in this email. She had said, let's see,
Could be income related.
yeah, if you're looking at the grant funds only, typically 50,000 max, sometimes can do additional funds of qualifying initiatives. Okay, Rockingham would be the only option as Saxon's River, based on the 2010 census, doesn't qualify. We will likely be adopting 2020 next fiscal, I don't know what that is, fiscal year. Not yet sure if the numbers change enough to qualify then. Rockingham is eligible at 55% grant level, i.e. you can apply for a 55% matching grant for the total project costs. I don't know if this is relevant, so I apologize. Keep in mind that based on our owner operator, I think that's, then she just goes into the community facility loan grant, which I think is something different because that's the,
So the USDA, they do have a list of municipalities in Vermont, and they have a formula where they look at the size of the population, because it is a rural grant, the median household income, and the chart lists every community, the median household income, and how much percentage grant you're eligible for. So something in that formula that Saxon's River doesn't meet.
correct.
Yeah, the reason I'm bringing this up because I keep thinking of some I guess I would call it political problems that could crop up. Saxon River takes and they fund their own fire department. Town of Rockingham doesn't pay any money to the fire town of Rockingham. Saxon River to fund the department. We fund the Rockingham Volunteer Fire Department to the tune of $37,000 every year. It's in their budget. Bellows Falls funds their own budget. The town doesn't supply any money to the town there. So town funds are involved with the village. I can just see the village coming up and say, how come they're getting money from you guys and we're not getting any money? So I could see this political drag going on here.
But doesn't it speak to the whole fire protection for the whole town of Rockingham?
What's that?
Doesn't it speak to this grant would provide some information and recommendations for the all three fire departments, right? Am I right then?
Yeah, that's
I
correct.
hope so.
Well, so one of the part of the formula is what are the assets in the coverage area that you're protecting from fire? And for the Bellows Falls Fire Department, I mean, it's not, the data will be in the report, you're right, but the value of the assets in the downtown in terms of fire and responsiveness, and the fact that there's a public safety building existing for the fire department in Bellows Falls makes it much less likely that there's going to be data suggesting that should move, or that we need a new Bellows Falls station.
Right.
Most of you have, I think it's 29 square miles that is Rockingham, and a couple of rural stations protecting the assets in that huge area. And so it's complicated. What's the best site or sites to do that coverage area? And the goal of this study is to tell us that. I mean, how do we make these costly decisions without good information? I don't think we can. So this study will provide that information and allow you to make good decisions. So the feasibility study provides you with the data, and then you look at it and make your decisions based on your values.
A fire department person that I spoke to said that Bellows Falls Department makes relatively few calls. You mentioned how many calls, so can we also analyze what the traffic is for each of the stations?
Yeah, I think the response time Scott was talking about, so there's the calls, where the assets are, what the response is to get there, how much work they do. They look at that whole formula. I don't know what all the pieces are of the formula. That's it. But yeah, I'm sure anything we're thinking of, that would be in their purview.
Do you think a manpower study is going to come out in this? I mean,
a what?
A manpower study. Right now, everybody, the whole state's looking for EMS people, fire department people, and I know Saxon River is way understaffed. Bellows Falls has got the same situation. I think Rockingham's got the most people in their fire department. So that's also going to have a bearing. A lot of times that a call comes in. In fact, recently we had a call and nobody from Saxon River responded. Bellows Falls had to go out there. So it's a situation of, you may say you got 10 people on your docket, on your roster, but if only 3 show up when the call goes out, that information has to be presented truthfully before, somebody can make a decent decision as to.
So the scope, when you're setting the contract, so do an RFP that outlines what we're looking to do, interview consultants, you talk with them about the issues, what you're looking for. When it comes to the point of a scope and writing a contract, you're gonna make sure that these pieces are in there.
Yeah.
And you're gonna further refine that in a kickoff meeting. It's really important to have the right people at the table, so whoever knows that, you know, what the parameters and issues are, you want them involved. Certainly, and that wouldn't be me, in the
No, I
scoping
know.
of the.
Yeah, I didn't know maybe you had an angle on what's required on that
Yes.
thing.
Well, are you ready for a motion or?
Bonnie was ready, I gave her the shooting football. She was champing the bit 10 minutes ago. So if there's no other further discussion about this, Bonnie, you have the floor.
Okay. I move to authorize the municipal manager to execute any and all documents required for the filing of this application for a community facilities grant and commit $5,000 matching funds to accompany $5,000 from Saxon's River and $10,000 from the United States Department of Rural Development.
I second that.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded to authorize the municipal manager to sign paperwork, et cetera, and to commit $5,000 matching funds from the town of Rockingham, Saxon River, and $10,000 from the USDA Rural Development. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would vote aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstained. Motion carried.
Oh, thanks, everybody. That's awesome.
Good luck.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I just want to thank all of you because my day job takes up a lot of my time. So doing this takes up a lot of time.
It does.
So thank you all very much because I've been at Chroma for 17 years and that's, you know, a lot of work. And then to throw this onto it, I understand where all of you are coming from. So I really appreciate it very much. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks.
Thanks for presenting
Thanks
so
for the-
clearly.
Oh, well, thank you. I have a great support system. So thank you.
Okay, getting back to our agenda that's been murdered here.
Just rearrange.
Let's try for number 5, the letter of support for the Greater Falls Area Services.
Thank you.
I
So,
do have that resolution here.
yes,
If
I wanted to put some backup in your packet, and this is a fairly important grant opportunity for the folks that are running the facilities over there. It really provides them an opportunity to continue to offer the programming that they do, provide the facilities for the other not-for-profits that are in that area, that, you know, in their one hospital court facilities. So at this point, they're just asking us to provide a letter of resolution of support to help their application and hopefully get funded.
Yeah, I think this was,
everybody has the resolution in front of them. Need to read this or?
You don't necessarily have to. It was a little involved. I think you can just simply ask.
So do we need I don't think we need a motion really. We're
It's not a
committing funds
financial
or anything.
commitment. It's just
All we're doing just
support of the board would be
support
helpful.
the consensus that we support the application. So all those in favor?
yeah,
Consent, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
done.
you. We'll pass that along.
Okay, now comes the fun one. Route 121 Bridge Construction Detour Plan. Where is this, which bridge is this you're talking about? The 91 overpasses, or are they talking about the one by the old mill?
By
Or
the,
the drum
By the
project
drum
there?
track.
right, by the, it's not the 91, it's down.
Okay.
But all, you can see where they're putting signs all over,
Yeah,
because I just wanted you guys to see that, to understand. The actual bridge itself is down off of 121. So,
it's right down by from the drum factory, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's only gonna be closed for, I think, proposed 2 months, but like any bridge project, it's always a little more involved in that. But I just wanted you guys to see the detour plan and to see the signage plan and just have an understanding. So if there's any other questions or concerns you want me to pass along to the state, I'll certainly do that. It's
So
gonna
as
be
it-
some impacts.
as it stands, a big detour is going on the back Westminster Road. Is that what I understand? What it looks-
Basically. And then there'll be signage out at the highway.
Anybody coming into Bells Falls, they're gonna have to go the back way and down over to Route
Well,
5.
the state won't put that on though, because they can't put it on one of the trips.
They have to detour on the state road. Correct?
They'll have to, well, you're right.
Well, I don't know if you can, actually.
Well, that 121 is actually a town road, it's not a state
Oh,
road.
it is town?
Right.
So town of Westminster is, you know, I heard a rumor they're gonna do a Bailey Bridge over. So that you go across and go around it, go up that road that fronts off to the right. And then where the old bridge used to be, there was an old bridge, you can see the abutments in the, if you look close, you can see abutments for an old bridge. And that's, I heard that rumor, but that's just rumor, so. Evidently, that's not gonna come true if they've got this. So. Gary, got your hand up.
Yeah, so just a question if it's supported, so that bridge has no sidewalk. And it's very narrow, and there is the opportunity that the Trails Group did look into if there's any way to add a bridge onto an existing one, and they do have cantilevered ones that could make a walking, biking piece on it. And so the question was just if V-Trans, if that was something you supported, being able to have that walkable, bikeable, if they would consider adding that on, the cantilevered walk.
You can certainly
And we
ask.
could certainly apply for grants to help with that.
Right.
I would definitely support that. I've also seen people with bikes and trying to navigate that bridge, cars coming in both lanes, and it's not safe.
But that's a town of Westminster issue, I think, and I don't know how, you'd probably have to go to them to see if they'd be willing to put that on. A town of Rockingham doesn't have much to say about that bridge.
Yeah.
I mean, we fought the detour at one point because nobody really wants to add another 10 miles onto their route coming into Bells Falls, but that's what evidently is gonna happen.
So if we support that, we would go to Russ Hodgkins and ask.
You'd have to go to Red Sox and see if the Westminster would approach the V-Trans to, you know, do that, whatever you want to get done there.
In it connects with Rockingham Trails, could we, as a board, make a motion to encourage Westminster to consider that?
We are abutters to the break. We're on both sides of the bridge.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, the same thing that works, the fight over, you know, ambulance and, you know, fire coverage, so.
Yeah.
It's gonna take longer to get where you gotta get, and get back out, so.
They closed Covered Bridge Road, you know, Henwood Hill and Covered Bridge, they closed that. Westminster did
And then, you know, so,
after that storm in the summer.
I mean, we could have, you know, I don't know if we could have a letter sent down there requesting that, you know, that take place and see what Westminster wants to do with it.
Yeah, because the Saxon River Valley Trail Initiative, it's a crucial piece, isn't it? Across the river.
Yes.
So anyway, I would put a motion out there that we as a board would encourage Westminster to apply for or seek the addition of a cantilever pedestrian / bike addition to that bridge.
That would have to be both on east and west side, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want people cutting across the line to get out. You'd have to have a cantilever on both sides. Which, you know, would add cost to the bridge, which the town of Westminster is picking up. So that's why I think you need to go to Westminster.
Yeah, I think it would be on one side when the Trails Group was scoping the trail, so that there is land for it to go on. And some of the challenges were just where the land is, but it was one side that, so the trail would be on one particular side.
Yeah, the south side.
What's that?
The south side.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's in the Swifties notes. There is information on it.
Yeah, so one side, I think. would do it.
Do we even know what the plan for this bridge is? Is it being widened? We don't know.
I don't.
I've
think
not
it's being
seen plans. All
widened.
they asked us for was a detour coming on a detour plan, but we could certainly ask them for more up-to-date engineering. So I have not seen anything more than just the request on the detour plan.
I mean, and this is gonna happen this summer, so they obviously had it designed.
Yeah, I know 2 years ago when they were discussing this, Louise Loring and I went down there and sat in. They held a meeting at the state police barracks and we sat in on that and got the detail on that.
On the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from what I can remember that if you're just gonna replace the bridge, we argued about putting doing a one-lane bridge, but the way that bridge is built, there's no center span to it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's just one span that goes across everything, so they have to remove the whole thing. It's the same situation they got up on Route 5 that we're gonna be dealing with, as you go down this steep hill there.
Oh, yeah.
That first bridge right there goes over the railroad tracks. And they're sure with that one too, in a few more years. Can't get there from here. Seriously, it's gonna be crazy.
Complicated.
So, do we have a second to his motion, to Rick's motion?
Oh,
I would second.
Okay, motion been made, seconded to forward, a request that they, put in a cantilever
consider for it.
walkway.
Consider a cantilever pedestrian bike walkway on the south side, so where that trail will be coming across.
Yes, that sounds
It's
great.
the south side,
South side, that's, okay.
because they've been looking at land, SRDTI, weren't they looking at this land there to carry the trail right over there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any other further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Right.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Can you, Scott, somewhere or other, send a letter?
I will. Yeah, I'll get some updates on that.
Get that done.
Yep.
Okay, review and approve orders, bills and warrants. Rob sent you, I think they've been signed, take a motion. Second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to review and approve orders, bills and warrants. Any further questions, discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Review agenda items for December 28, 2021 meeting. That's going to be a budget if needed.
So we'll invite tree warden, we'll invite Cass to talk about the trees as we talked about this evening. We'll have updated regular budgeted financials as well as the update from tonight's conversation about the
Right.
23 budget and then an update on what that would mean potentially for a tax rate.
So as it stands, there's no 21 meeting. I know one of these, we've got the updates to the.
Well, there is a meeting on the 21st, but that's going to be a trustee meeting. Because we're
Okay,
only doing one
but
meeting in
there's the
December.
3:30 meeting. Is that going to be held down here, Gary, upstairs? That 3:30 meeting that you got scheduled for the 21st.
Oh, yeah, upstairs.
Upstairs, okay.
Yeah.
I think I had that on my
So
note.
what meeting is that?
So that's the 21st at 3:30?
Yeah.
So there's an architect team, a construction guy and a finance guy that are on the team that was awarded the feasibility study for the train station. And so there's a kickoff meeting with that team at 3:30 on Tuesday.
That was invited, that's why I just threw it out.
Oh, okay.
And Scott's gonna be there, Gary's gonna be there, I guess.
Mhm.
So,
And then our next meeting is the 28th, then, is that right?
Yes, regular time.
yeah, the
at
next
6
meeting is
o'clock.
28, yeah, that's,
6.
I know that one of the previous budget calendars
Right.
said 21st.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
been
that
changed
hasn't
over,
changed
so,
a while ago, right?
so make sure everybody got to know, the 28th is the next meeting.
28, I
At
knew that.
6, not
And
at
it's
5.
6, not 5:30.
And it's 6?
At
not
6.
5:30?
No, this one says 6 o'clock start on mine.
Good.
Yeah.
So, it'll basically be a review of what we've already gone through, and if anybody's got any other questions and additions, deletions
Right.
we made by Scott and Alyssa, and we'll get another draft out and see where it goes. So you might want to review the draft that was handed out tonight, just to see if there's anything you should buy on there.
It's the version with the page numbers.
Correct.
Right. Okay, review agenda items for a joint board meeting, that's a ways away, so unless somebody's got an urgent.
I've got one little announcement. I had a good conversation with Laura Scherbaum and Deb Whitkus about a town meeting or a forum on the cannabis question. And if we can find someone to advocate on from the commercial community, the BFDDA possibly, we'll have a educational session in mid-February before, so that people will, we'll get some experts and different folks representing the pros and cons and the complexities. So that just know that we're working on that. And they and I will have another meeting at the 20th, I think. I'll keep you guys up to date on what might be planned.
In conjunction with that, I know it was brought up at the joint board meeting by Jig's McCall of the 1% optional sales tax. Do we want to include that on the town warrant, town meeting?
I didn't
I
put,
know
it
you
on-
got-
I didn't put anything on the budget, just, you know.
Would that be an excise tax we can apply to a single product, or
No.
would that everything?
No, you can-
Townwide.
I think you can exempt something.
No, it's a
No,
sales tax to
townwide.
everything, all
Oh,
items that are
everything.
sales
I
tax.
think the merchants would have
No,
it.
not with New Hampshire.
Next
right
door.
there.
No, I know,
Yeah.
I just,
Okay,
I know that
thank you.
Brattleboro has it.
I
and,
know.
You know, a few other towns have enacted it, to get the supposed extra revenue they think they're gonna get, so.
Yeah, I'm counting on the legislature to come through with a better revenue split, but
Yeah,
I know there wasn't much consensus on at that point with Jig's comment, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
you know,
well, some other towns
Yeah.
aren't like next door to New Hampshire.
Brattleboro.
or Brattleboro,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Londonderry, I think is, but they're not, you know, anywhere near. I think Londonderry, didn't Londonderry adopt the 1%?
No, they adopted the retail cannabis, they did
Yeah.
not adopt the integrated cannabis.
Right.
And I don't think they adopted the
I
1%.
thought they did,
No,
but maybe
I don't
not.
believe so.
I know one of those towns, either that or Ludlow did, I'm
I
not
think
sure. I
Ludlow
don't think
might.
Ludlow, but,
I think.
okay, I assume you did that under other business?
yes, that was other
Okay,
business,
not
sorry.
a problem.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Sue?
Nope.
Fine. I have none. Gary, you got anything? Okay, take a motion to adjourn. I guess there's no need for executive session.
I move that we adjourn.
Second?
Second.